What's up, family? Welcome back to another installment of Metaphysics on Your Mind. Um, we are, well, at least we have been for the last several episodes in the book of Revelation. And I thought we would kind of at least wrap up this flyover that we're doing on Revelation in maybe in this installment here. But the reason why this is called co-creation is the book itself. We're going to read Revelation 14, 6 through 20, is an exercise in co-creation and what can be accomplished, and what we've proposed that the more that we are able to spend time within ourselves and reconnect with that, divine source, that the one source, the most high, mother and father, however you want to phrase the higher, okay? The more that we're able to get into context in communion, just like those chakras talked about, the seven of this and the seven of that, and we know the 7 days of the week, creation, six days of creation, seventh day of rest. If we extrapolate from the creation of 7 days and we come up to the seven churches of Revelation, basically from Genesis to Revelation, and we're kind of back to this seven, there's clearly a synchronicity, or there's a connection with these energy centers, these vortexes that are vital to our spiritual anatomy, quote unquote. If there's a connection to creation, okay? If for those who subscribe to the idea that there is a, creator, a supreme creator, a progenitor of all there is, was, ever can be, it's on into infinity. If you subscribe to that, and you are, as we're told in this book and in other books, that we are in effect aspects of the creator, of the Most High, sons and daughters of the Most High, created in the image of God, okay, then we participate in the unfolding creation that is infinite, right? We have power of choice. We can choose to make decisions. We can choose to redistribute energy or create, quote unquote, something, okay? We have that power. So although one would not want to, get it all twisted and think that you are the source of that power, whatever you are plugged into that power, which is a creative power, which creates, as that's our experience. Then what would happen if you could with intention, co-create with the Most High, with the source of all creation? If you could merge, okay, yourself with the higher supreme self, what would be the product? What would be the outcome, right? Well, you are a co-creator. You are working with the power of the universe. You are working with that from which you come, but you're doing it in a conscious way. Now, co-creation, we also know that there can be a destructive intent, that you can use the great power for, negative, shall we say, reasons or for negative intent, because it's a power, right? We talked about electricity, we talked about nuclear fission videos ago, where you can tap in that power and it can be a great benefit or it can be a hugely destructive force, depending upon how the energy is applied, the power is applied, right? The intention has a lot to do with what is the trajectory of utilizing this power. What is the end? What is the means, to the end? Okay. But we're talking about creation. We're talking about, and we'll read this, but the minds, whether you want to say that these were divinely inspired minds, these great writers and thinkers and holy ones or anointed ones or ascended ones throughout our history on this planet, to even come up with systems like this, and there are many others, it implies creativity. Okay. Nothing that can be as intricate and, again, for those who dig into it a little bit, as instructive as dealing with these metaphysical systems like astrology, the zodiac, for some, energy readers. I mean, these are people that are tapped in, okay, and shall we say, the experience you have that is maybe an alternative to what you may have experienced growing up or what you may have been taught traditionally. You can only expand your consciousness that way, right? You can't you can't lose at the end of the day, whether it's for you or not for you. You now have an experience, or you have knowledge, or you have done some investigation, or you've done some comparison. You've utilized a reference point of which you can measure to a degree, or your own intuitive feeling. Is this connecting? Am I feeling this, or is this something that's just an intellectual exercise? Because you can't live off of intellectual exercises, right? We live more by our feelings, right? That's where our decision making. We talked about that in Genesis. That's what Eve represents. Hey, desires, and wow, that looks good, and wow, I want to try that, and that's part of our makeup. That's what makes this experience in duality so challenging, because again, you have free will and you can make a great decision for yourself and for others, or you can go the other direction. It's all there. It's all part of the mix. So co-creation, if we read this book and just the way the symbols are used, the way the mythology is used, the way the cosmic psychology is used, the way the metaphors and allegories and the illusions and the levels, okay, that bespeaks creativity. Whoever the authors were, whether they were the people that are given credit as being the authors or not, it bespeaks that somewhere, somehow, these minds and others tapped into something that could create. It's like a spider in its web, right? How intricate. It's like the spider is like a natural architect. Everything is just so. Well, it's the same with many of these natural systems that have developed over time. They develop for a reason, because they're tied to nature. That's why we say natural. They're not artificially, shall we say, constructed, which is what the Tower of Babel was all about, right? Hey, we're going to get to heaven. We're going to find a way to do that. We're going to build a tower and we're going to take heaven by storm. Oh, no, you're not. That's another illusion that someone got you all wrapped up in, because it's not an intellectual exercise. It's an exercise in submission. Number one. Why? Because the thing that prevents you most from making connections with your most high within you is your own ego, is your own self. Okay? That program, that computer that we need to operate in the physical is also your greatest enemy to enlightenment. It's just the way that the nature of how things are constructed in duality. You need this, but it can become an enemy. You love yourself on some days, but then you can be your own worst enemy. I've been there. We've all been there. That's the mystery of this detective story, cosmic detective story that we're in. It's like a massive game of hide and seek, trying to find who's who and what's what. Why am I here? What am I doing? And as I alluded to in the last video, again, if you take out the possibility or the probability that your soul has experienced life in different physical forms on this earth, okay, this is not for this episode, but when you are ruminating and contemplating this stuff, you're going to run across that again and again and again, because again, this book and all these systems are of no consequence if you got one shot and you're here and you just happen in this particular life to not be particularly bright or not particularly athletic or this or that, and you do the best you can. But some other people seem to be so blessed. Well, what if that wasn't the only time that they've experienced what the vagaries of life can present in human form? What if in one life you've been a short person? And what if in another life you were a tall person? Or a man in one life? Or a woman in another life? What if you've been a different race in a different life? You would have a different experience. Do you think that the Most High presumably, put us here to have a singular experience? One experience? Well, I get to experience life, as a brother, and that's it, and there you go. Where's your point of reference? Where's your opportunities for understanding and growth if you only have, one element that you're working with? Oh, I got this one life, and I got lucky, and I'm wealthy, and I have everything pretty much that I want. Do we honestly think that's the end of the story? Do you think that the power that created the nuances of what we would call our human experience, you're gonna pull it all together or not? One shot, maybe you get unlucky and your shot is ended at the age of 16, or another scenario could be that you live to be 99 but you're not fulfilled. No, the proposition here of this book and other ancient writings is that this is again a mystery that we are experiencing, okay? And that's what all this stuff is about, is like navigating finding your place within this great mystery. And there's just no way that it's of much consequence one time around. Anyway, let's read Revelation 14, 6 through 20. And then we can kind of wrap this up. We may not even read the whole thing, but let's, because we're talking about co-creativity. The minds that put this together, whether, whatever what might have been derived from earlier cultures, like I said, going back where a lot of this comes from ancient Kemet, okay, thousands of years before, and then there's a reconstitution of these truths and this higher wisdom and higher knowledge that has been passed in some cases covertly, in other cases a little bit differently, but it, for the most part, it requires you to dig deeper than what's ever going to be presented to you on the surface. Okay? No one's going to do the detective work in most cases for you. We have to do it at least enough to satisfy ourselves that, okay, I checked this out, and yeah, this is cool, but at least you checked it out. So let me just jump to Revelation 14, and because it's kind of interesting, because the creativity, that's what we're looking at. It's like this is the movie that we're shooting. In the movie, you have, you get to cast your movie. Some of the characters you inherit, your parents, your family, and so on and so forth, and others you get to cast, and you get to recreate a story that may, to a degree, is told in many thousands of ways, but it's always unique because it's your story, right? So we're going to pick up where we left off from the last video, that was Revelation 14:5, talking about the mouth with no guile, and we are virgins, or of the virgin mind. This is Revelation 14:6, and here we go. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Let's stop there. So this angel flying in the midst of heaven, so we're talking about the higher, right off the top, right? And we're talking about an angel, we're talking about light, we're talking about an angle of light, or an angel of light, okay? Having the everlasting gospel. Well, what is gospel? There was a musical, I guess it was back in the 60s, right? And gospel really is, it's the name of this particular musical. Godspell. That's what the gospel is. When you go deep into meditation, when you commune with the Most High God, when you go into that state of rest, you are under God's spell. Remember we talked about spelling and cursing? Okay? God's spell. Gospel. We've got the EL again, right? Israel, Angel, Michael, and on and on and on. We can go on and on and on with it. But you are under the spell of God when you are deep into meditation. That's the gospel. See, there's gospel music, and there's, preaching the gospel. I'm not knocking any of that. But this comes from that. And that comes from ascending the 7 churches, the 7 chakras, the 7 candlesticks, the 7 spirits of God, the 7 days of the week, 6 days shalt thou labor, 6 days of creation, okay? And that 7th day of rest, known as the Sabbath. That's the Sabbath chakra, okay? Because this says to all nations. What does it say? Let's read that again. And having the everlasting gospel, God spell, okay, to preach unto them that dwell on the earth. Well, who dwells on the earth? We do. What? The lower mind. Those on the earth, as opposed to the heavens. Remember, we talked about the earth represented the lower thoughts, lower emotions, the desires, all the stuff that kind of keeps us rooted to the flesh, the physical, as opposed to the spiritual, right? You're under God's spell, and the preaching unto them that dwell on the earth, the lower, right? Preaching to them, preaching to the lower parts of ourselves, preaching to that flesh, but this is happening internally. It's not happening out here, okay? It's happening within all of us, at least when we're in this process. And to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. What does that mean? That means that this spell is available to everyone. Just like in the story of Noah, the covenant, the rainbow, would always be available to every person with a soul on this planet. If you know about it, if some exposure has been gained to it, okay? That's how you go into the gospel. The gospel is preached when it talks about Christ preaching. That's talking about the Christ mind, ministering to you, teaching you, okay? Elevating you and separating you from the flesh, from the multitude. Preaching the gospel in your mind. That's God's spell you're under when that happens. And that is the ultimate spell, because you don't have control, you can't control, you must surrender. But you have a choice of whether you want to do that or not. We'll pick this up in the next installment. So, we'll kind of pick it up from here, Revelation 14. But we're just going through the creativity of that in one verse. There's an angel in the midst of heaven and the everlasting gospel and preaching to them that dwell on the earth and to every nation and kindred and tongue. And what happens is, because of the way that we've been, tradition or whatever has taught us, we immediately start thinking externally. Oh, the seven churches of Asia. Well, remember the scripture we said where it said, I know where Satan's seat is? And we said it was Pergamos, the church of Pergamos, which is the third chakra, the solar plexus. So you have the kingdom of God, and you have Satan's seat here. Remember we talked about the lower three chakras, and you have to go through the heart, the gateway, okay, and ascend. So if that's Satan's seat, and this is also God's kingdom, all of this is taking place within you. It's not out there somewhere. The seven churches of Asia are within you. Why? Because how could Satan's seat be in one of the seven churches in Asia Minor back, 2,000 years ago or whatever it was? So we know where Satan's seat is. It's in that particular church. It just happens to be in Pergamos. Let's spread the word. I mean, come on. We're talking about an internal reality that uses external symbols so that you have points of reference, and that there's a story that can be more or less easily relatable, just like a child's nursery rhyme or whatever. It's how you can remember. You can remember something in a story form that makes allusions to things that you know. Because how else are you going to talk about an energy center to people that don't know anything about that type of internal dynamic? Because there's, you don't have objective physical evidence. You don't see people walking around with the seven colors of the rainbow, in dots up and down, right? We're talking about the metaphysical. So anyway, that's it for this particular installment. And again, co-creative. That's a birthright. That's a proposition we have, is that you have a birthright to co-create with the creator or the divine or the most high, whatever you want to say it is, that power. You tap in actually one way or the other. Okay? Thank you.